Right for women. You know, the flag.
I'd like to call to order the February 9th, 2023 special meeting of the Everett Public School Board of Directors to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Lestain,
Present.
Vice President Mitchell,
Present.
Director Herman,
Present.
Director Nichols,
Present.
Director Mason.
Present.
Thank you very much. The next item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, would you like to introduce tonight's agenda?
Yes. Thank you, Madam President, Board of Directors, and the public. The purpose of today's meeting is for the board to discuss the fiscal outlook of the district, participate in a budget development workshop, and approve a resolution for the superintendent to develop a reduction plan for the 2023-24 fiscal year.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saltzman. If all directors are in agreement, the agenda can be approved by general consent. Thank you very much. We shall begin. The next item is to begin the work study session on the budget development and fiscal outlook. The presenters of this section are many, so I shall let the first individual coming up forward to introduce the followings.
Good afternoon, Madam President.
Dr. Saltzman.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam President and the Board of Directors. Thank you for being here today. The topic of our study session is budget related, and unfortunately it's not the best of news. The administration is predicting a budget deficit that could reach $38 million for the next fiscal year. As a result, I am recommending that the board pass a resolution before we leave tonight, recognizing the necessity of reductions for the next fiscal year and issuing a directive for us to develop a reduction plan for the board to review at the February 28th special board meeting. In order for you to adopt the resolution, I need for each member of the board to understand the deficit factors, the community and staff feedback to date, and the areas that the cabinet and I have identified for potential reductions. Tonight we need your interaction, discussion, and feedback so the reduction work can proceed. Before we begin, I would like to make several items clear. Crunching the numbers with my team and working through scenarios has been quite difficult. It has been hard for my cabinet, hard for many groups I have spoken with and sought amazing and great input. To be quite clear, it's work that has kept me up many nights. Right-sizing next year's budget so the expenditures will not exceed revenue will have a significant impact on our system. And I see that and notice that. I'm not taking this lightly. I know the factors that have brought us to this place. I've identified the steps that will take us to lead us out of this deficit, and I will lead us out of this deficit. While I know we're not alone in the economic struggle as an issue for our area, which is quite an economic struggle in the entire area, Everett is quite unique in the amazing supports we have put in place for our students and our outstanding staff. We have always had kids first, and will continue to make them the priority for this process of right-sizing the district and its budget for long-term financial stability. These decisions are not just for next year. They are for the future success of Everett Public Schools. As we begin the session this afternoon, I would like to thank President Lestain for her feedback on the interactive design of this workshop this evening. The board will be reviewing the budget deficit factors and the guiding principles used by the cabinet. You will hear feedback from the staff and community survey. We will share the areas we have identified for potential reductions for next year, and then we'll ask the board to participate in a gallery walk, where members of the cabinet will discuss potential reductions in detail and answer every director's questions. Directors will rotate through these stations and provide feedback. After the gallery walk, directors will return to their seats and continue the discussion in the group, which I truly would appreciate. At the end, I will ask for your consideration of the resolution, recognizing the necessity of reductions for the next fiscal year. I want to thank you in advance for your support during these times and the engagement in the process this evening. I value your input. Now I'd like to hand it over to Ms. Angie Tress. Thank you, kindly.
Thank you, Dr. Salzman.
Thank you, Dr. Saltzman. Thank you, Board of Directors. As Dr. Saltzman stated, I'll be going over the budget deficit and some of the factors that have impacted our budget. In August of 2022, the district adopted a budget of $11.8 million, a budget deficit of $11.8 million, meaning our revenues exceeded expenditures. Based on spending through the end of December 2022, our deficit increased to $14.7 million, which is a fund balance of 5.4 of expenditures, and this is slightly greater than our board policy of 5% fund balance. Based on those projections, we're looking at our 23-24 deficit. Our revenues of one-time federal funding for COVID relief is going away. We're recognizing increases in our state and levy dollars, and we're estimating our cost of increases to salary, which is kind of our major cost to the district. And we expect there to be approximately $29.5 million deficit for next year. Some of the funding factors that impacted our budget is the decision that happened in 2018 regarding the McCleary decision to increase basic education funding. What happened was this increased our state funding and it was paired with a local levy cap. This also decreased our regionalization. This regionalization factor is a factor that increases our overall state funding based on the fact that it's more expensive to live in this area than other parts of the district. This model really tried to fix an existing model rather than create a new funding model. And as Dr. Saltzman already stated, we are experiencing a statewide problem regarding our funding. The decrease in regionalization is specific to kind of our area and our district. Overall, we've received one-time federal funding related to the COVID pandemic. However, that will be going away, and we had budgeted $8 million for this year. This has also impacted our enrollment, which has declined in our area and urban and suburban areas. But it also had increased our educational needs, which isn't going away. So we are working together to identify the whys of why we're here for a potential $28 to $38 million deficit for next year. And we'll go into details on the next slides. The four major reasons are increased cost of materials and service, increased staffing costs, and the fact that state doesn't cover all basic education costs, and unpredictable funding. In short, our revenues aren't keeping up with the needs of the district. We are seeing increases in costs of material and services related to inflation, and these are sort of the hidden costs like utilities we don't see outright touching each student. We're also seeing increases in staffing costs. We create a budget based on IPD, and which is a cost of living adjustment for our salaries and increases, and it's been higher than predicted in the past. That total increase for this year is $23.3 million, and the state only pays a portion of that cost. Some of those salaries are locally funded, which is great for our staff and being competitive in the marketplace, but it is negative to our budget. We also have very experienced veteran teachers, and which is amazing for our students and the impact to them. However, 45% of our teachers are at the highest step in our salary range, meaning that the gap in state funding is greater in those areas. The state does not cover all basic education. In special education alone, we were $9 million underfunded last year. In addition, the prototypical funding model doesn't fund all of the positions we need for the district, and it doesn't cover all of our staffing costs. Currently, the state covers only about 83% of our certificated salaries. And this is a cost of $24.3 million that is locally funded in certificated salaries. Overall, this local funding covered $52.9 million of our expenditures. I want to just note on the certificated salaries that after the McCleary decision, 90% of our salaries were funded by the state, and that's declined 7% to 83% of our salaries. We've had unpredictable funding, partly due to regionalization. As I said earlier, regionalization is a cost of living increase to our state funding, and it started at 24% when the McCleary decision was made and has decreased 2% each year to 18% for this fiscal year. Enrollment has been declining, has slightly declined, and decreases our per pupil funding for the state. And again, our one-time federal funding for COVID relief is going away, and that's $8 million of our budget this year. Revenues, again, are not keeping up with our expenditures. Over the last several years, we've had many great supports and services to our students. We see the limitation in our funding model and need to adjust our expenses to be in line with our revenues. Ultimately, we need to right-size the district. Redefining our range, our range is a point in time, and as we get more and more information, when we bring our first reading of the budget in June, we will have a more precise number. Some of the factors impacting that is our funding related to enrollment, which we are firming up this month, as well as funding related from the legislature. We don't expect to hear anything until late April or early May, and we do not expect a bailout. Salary increases are based on IPD, and last year we weren't identified, and those increases weren't identified until May due to the state legislation. Special services funding from the state also for safety net funding is not received until the July-August timeframe. And again, the levy increases are not identified until August due to a cost of living adjustment at that point in time. However, we will bring you a budget with most updated information in the June timeframe for you guys to see during the first reading. Kathy will be talking about our inputs and suggestions.
Good afternoon. As early as November, we started working on this in large and small groups, and the first thing we did is our weekly cabinet sessions. I would call them extended cabinet sessions, hours and hours every week working on trying to define the numbers, understanding the range, making priorities, and seeing how we can engage different groups in this process. In December, we started with the Principal Advisory Group, where they helped us create those key guiding principles and prioritize the way we want to look at things, as well as beginning to assess what kind of impacts different decisions will have, and they gave us preliminary feedback. Then when we got back from winter break, we did the staff and community survey, which is posted on the website. You can see the answers for that. There were 1,880 people who participated in that survey. Got some really good feedback and some general guidance on how we can continue to prioritize based on both what staff feel and what families feel. There has been weekly EEA consults, so a couple of our staff meet with the leadership of the EEA every week, as well as meeting with other groups in not weekly, but maybe like bi-monthly meetings as well. There has been a couple administrator and supervisor meetings as well, where we have started talking to them about what they see as priorities, how they can give ideas, how they can communicate this in their buildings and carry it out to their staff, as well as just things like how to navigate the unknown. Because right now, as Andy mentioned, there are some unknowns still. So that's a hard place for staff to be. So how do we help them navigate that? And we met the President's Council, which is the leadership of every union group, so we could get feedback from all the union groups and not just the EEA. We did have a principal-only meeting in a workshop format, so we could explore some more of the school-based impacts, which also included potential administrative reductions and staffing costs and what their feedback would be about that. We held a teacher focus group, so the EEA selected about 25 teachers that came in and they helped us through some of those prioritization exercises as well. Last week we had a community resource center, so this building meeting, staff meeting, and they got to work through some of the questions that they have as well. And we'll have more meetings with them as they are able to give suggestions. In addition, even though the survey has ended and some of these meetings have ended, we have that budget email that's on our website, and we've been getting suggestions and questions submitted through that as well. So people still have an ongoing way to submit any suggestions. And what we've been doing is we just have a big spreadsheet, and all of these different groups, we've been compiling their suggestions and categorizing them into is that a staffing thing, or is that a district thing, or is that a transportation thing? And so all of those pieces feed into some of the things that you'll be looking at this evening. And then this is the time frame. I think you may have seen this before, but you can see we started in November working through some of these things, and you can see where we fit the different engagement sessions. Obviously, February 9th, that's where we are today. Where we're doing the workshop. After this, we will continue to meet, and if you do approve the need for reduction plan this evening, then you can see we will continue to work on finalizing the plan to give to the superintendent, who would then bring that to you at the February 24th, or the February 28th meeting for your consideration. And now, Dr. Scott.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm going to try to use this wireless microphone because I want to move around the room a little bit to transition us into a brief discussion and description of the exercise that we'd like to lead you in. And again, thank you to President Lassane for providing some initial feedback on that design. We wanted to start here, and you've seen these guiding principles, and we started back in, I think it was late November, really crafting collectively with stakeholders what is important, because we knew that not all, but a lot or most of the FAQs that were being derived around our understanding and the implications of the budget deficit could really be, if not assuaged, answered at a high level through these lenses. When people say, who's making the decisions, on what basis or through what lens are they making these decisions? These, time and again, for the last, I would say, 8-10 weeks have served us very well. Not just us in this room, but across the organization. This is about preserving items and services that directly affect student learning to the greatest extent possible. So if you think about this, and I think we've talked about this before, the idea of teaching and learning, and the student being at the center of everything that we do, and the school being the center of the community. That is at the center of these concentric circle rings, and those concentric circles, no matter where one is located, their roles and responsibility, we all exist, the organization exists to serve the interests of what that core is. The teacher and the student in the presence of content, right? That's the instructional core. So if you resonate with that metaphor, that's what we want to go with, that idea of concentric circles. Guided by high-quality Tier 1 instruction, that really is a driver in our strategic plan. It's front and center. It's front and center in our leadership development. Thirdly, regulatory, legal, and contractual requirements, as well as space needs. So there are, and this is sort of intuitive, but there are certainly items of compliance and regulatory rules, statutes that we need to be paying attention to that we cannot compromise in this process. And lastly, considering consolidating and reorganizing work to increase efficiencies and effectiveness. So we anticipate, given the scope and the range of the potential reductions that we're going to be unpacking a bit tonight, that there will be some reorganization in different areas of our work, and that's looking again at efficiencies and effectiveness and consolidation there. So we need to pay attention again to how our work affects and impacts and the return on investment of those means to the ultimate end of moving student achievement forward. Okay, so this gets us to the exercise here that we would like to lead you all through. Understanding potential reductions by area. So we've got 5 potential reduction areas identified. And I want to just reiterate that these were shaped by the stakeholder feedback to date. So these weren't developed in a vacuum, these weren't dreamt up based on the dollar amount did not drive them. These were, again, if you think about it's helpful for a lot of us to think about it in concentric circles. We're talking about things that would preserve the instructional core and looking at those support mechanisms. And you'll see some rhymes and reasons, I think, to the different potential categories. And you're going to hear us say potential over and over again because these are potential. Tonight's objective in this exercise is to solicit your feedback on prioritization and run through an exercise that we've talked about a little bit, what the President was saying on value voting, and we'll get to that in a bit. Receiving your feedback is important, and why is that important to do this evening? So that we have a better understanding primarily of again, what your priorities are to date on February 9th, your current considerations, and that's the idea of the sticky dots, right? What would you like us to consider or revisit or strongly reconsider? Some of the key questions that will be surfaced in each of these areas here for us to collate, to make sense of, to help unpack tonight as we split each of you out into these stations for about 12 minutes to unpack what's behind that particular line item underneath that umbrella. And we have content experts that will help facilitate those things. So we'll do that for 12 minutes at each station, okay? And then you'll have an opportunity to come and process together as a 5-member board and a team here. And ask, as Dr. Salzman mentioned, the Q&A, speak with one another about what stood out in any respective area around the room, any points of clarification. And again, the idea of the yellow and red sticky dots, and I want to go over that a bit. What do you want the team to reconsider as a potential area for reduction? You would use, and again, this is up to you whether or not you want to use a yellow or red sticky dot, but it is a visual for us. If the overall range of the reduction model is around approximately $29 million represented in the room, what would you like us to reconsider? That proverbial yellow light to say caution, right? We would caution you to reconsider. And then as you think about a yellow or red dot, we're gonna have the facilitators prompt, to the extent possible, alternatives to reduction. So are there other things that you might reconsider in lieu of what I'm providing, this sort of visual representation of a caution there? And then as we look across the room and as we take back your notes and station managers, leaders, whatever fancy term you'd like, we'll bestow that title on you later. The content experts and facilitators will help scan for and take notes on and represent your ideas. And most of which we think, if you have questions, will be able to be answered and unpacked. And those that won't, we'll parking lot them and it will help us shape, ultimately, assuming that there is a resolution considered tonight, to charge the superintendent and staff to create a reduction model by February 28th. Having your direct feedback will assist greatly, and that would be the ask and really the spirit of the exercise tonight.
Can I ask a question really quick?
You bet.
Because like we'll be starting at one and going to the others. Would there be a minute for us to just go to round and see visually where we aligned? To see if maybe one of my dots is an outlier, or if maybe it might help a discussion if we could just take a minute just to look at them again?
Let's do that. That is a huge element of a gallery walk, and we had thought about that, and I'm sorry that I didn't mention that as well. I think that would help, Director Mitchell, in terms of as you kind of make your way around to see where other folks had thought, or whether they expanded on an idea that you contributed there. before you come back in your horseshoe-shaped table, that you'd be able to take.
Because I
that
figure,
actual
when I'm
count.
the fifth person, I'm gonna see everybody on that one, but the first one, I'm not gonna know
The,
the line.
the best part of the gallery walk, you'll be able to see, which is nice, and you get that input. Good. Good
Any
question.
other question procedurally on, we want to make sure that we carved out sufficient time for you to do that in 10 to 12 minutes, and Kathy Reeves is going to be kind of be our timekeeper. We'll go counterclockwise, and if we can just start by the folks that are the closest to, so Director Nichols, if you would start there, Director Herman here, Director Mitchell, and President Listang, Director Mason over here. We're here to help, we're here to serve as a resource. We will cue you when everybody's gone, let's see, we'll be going, I think, what is this, clockwise. And then we will cue you to take that gallery walk so you can see the composite, and then we'll come back together. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Sounds
Let's do
good,
that.
very good.
Thank you.
Do we have the sticky dots over by the easels?
Oh, I got it right.
We have the stickies.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I
Okay, thank you for that activity, and I hope it was beneficial to everybody, extremely transparent to our board, our community, and to our staff. Again, staff, amazing work that we all contributed. This is the fruition of great work for 8 weeks. President was saying, and the board of directors, this is your time to have discussion now regarding your processes of the red dots that you've done, the discussion that you can talk with each other. We haven't turned around, but we're willing to return around so you can see it one more time, at least under the gallery walk. Staff will answer any questions you still have, but I'd like you to have some time of discussion right now.
Yes, sir.
As you went through this process.
Yes, sir.
And I think it was beneficial. So I'm going to turn over to the president right now. Thank you.
Thank you all for the work that you did and taking the time to go through them. I hope you had an opportunity to ask some really tough questions, because tough questions are required at this particular moment in time. One of the things that I would like to say is Everett has been a high-performing school district, and we've offered a lot to our students. We've ensured that, as was brought out in the discussion previously, that we have done a lot of things that if they touched the student, it was important to us. You know, the student was at the center of that hub, and everything that supported the student was what we felt was valuable. We have a lot of priorities in our strategic plan that we're focusing on, a lot regarding student achievement in reading, in mathematics, and science, and those things that touch the student in those particular areas need to be preserved. That's our strategic plan, and we want to make sure we do that. The other thing that we've done over time for ensuring that our kids are ready for graduation, moving on to their next career in life or work, is to ensure that they have an opportunity to be able to engage in a lot of different programs. That has been our priorities. And so those things that touch the kids are important. I'd like your comments and your concerns at this particular time so that we can have an opportunity to discuss them between ourselves and ask questions from the staff if you feel necessary. Who would like to start and ask any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I would say what was fairly consistent from all the presenters was that there's a lot more going into the thought about these FTEs, these reductions, than just seniority or position or whatever it may be. I'm really truly hopeful that we can get through most of these reductions through, you know, just a natural attrition. And when it's not that case, that we're very intentional about what jobs we're looking at, what programs we're looking at, and I really got the sense of that from everybody. The one thing I would urge the board to consider is looking at our budget as a not that it's going to make a dent in $29 million of deficit, but look at our budget and seeing what of that we can redirect back into any of these programs or positions. You know, because if we can keep one more facilitator or one more AP or whatever it may be, if that little bit helps, we have a responsibility to do that. So whether it's not taking our salaries, getting rid of any travel stipends, things like that, then that's something that we should consider.
Thank you very much. Good point. Good point. Director?
I have I think that wouldn't be a bad idea for us to look at and see where the opportunities are for the board budget, because we're not traveling to NSBA. It is sort of, I asked Darlene today about, you know, costs to go down to Olympia. I'm only going to pay my own gas and stuff, so it is sort of, you know, having a discussion about that amongst ourselves, because I am privileged, I can pay for my own, I have an electric car now. But I really looked at this and I put yellow dots on a few that if we can have the money back for facilitators, coaches, and principals, vice principals, or the ones that remain that we really do look at what is the building, school buildings needs, and we really, you know, right now it's sort of, if you have it was before we gave house principals to everybody, but it was vice principals, but it was, you know, if you had 750, you got a vice principal, but maybe it is really, what is the ML, what is the free and reduced, what is your Achieve program, what is your current, did I say free and reduced lunch? If you're only 500, maybe you do actually have more than if you are 750 without a lot of that. Maybe not more by 3, but maybe more by a half or more by 1. And so it is just sort of right-sizing the schools with either who's left, or if we can add back to Andrew's point, 1 or 2, save 1 or 2, that every principal and their leader decides what is the right for this school. And the principal and the leader be very honest with what is right for the students in this school. And I do believe every school is going to could look a little different because of the needs of that building, of that neighborhood. And then, I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but it looked like we were pretty much in agreement potentially about the social workers being paid out of ESSER funds. I don't think I appreciated that was ESSER funds when we hired them. Maybe they knew about it, but I believe they are an essential role in this district. And so there was an opportunity, maybe if some ESSER funds haven't been spent, it could be saved for a year while we find new funding. But I see that as an essential role. I put a red dot on it because I do think that some of our kids do need the help of outside services that social workers connect with.
So can I jump on that comment?
Yes.
What's interesting is that, you know, that we have an allotment for counselors, social workers, it's part of the formula, the school funding formula, and it was increased by the state by a small amount. And as you know, we have more people than what the state funds, and we use our local levy dollars, but social workers can be out of that fund. We just have always chosen to do other, you know, counselors and that kind of thing, and so maybe we want to rethink how we use that funding, both local levy dollars and the dollars that come from the state, to keep social workers. And it impacts, and it sounds like there might be some contractual things around counselors and things like that, but you know, if there's a way to work it so that we don't have to come up with like a special pot of money every year, it's a part of that state funding.
I like that, and again, that's a regional and their principals and finding the right sizes, potentially. You know, again, with contracts, very good point.
We definitely don't have enough social workers, but as I mentioned, when I talked to Chad and to Andy over here, social workers are used to being in grant-funded positions, so all of those social workers ostensibly knew that they were in a position that was funded by ESSER funds that isn't guaranteed to be there. That being said, 3 social workers for a district this size is not enough, and doing with less is going to be rough.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement we want to keep them.
Yeah, that's what
I'm all for keeping social workers. I think we've utilized them very well in the, you know, the short time that we've had them, and I think that's one area we're going forward, I think we should use. My other concern, go ahead.
Oh, it was related. It was actually my wondering of when we talk social workers, school counselors, even assistant principals, how much of the work may be shared within different positions, and so that might look different in each school. And it's about sort of that service and get it done, no matter what hat they're doing it from. But I absolutely agree, that's something that the need has gone up, and so we recognize that. But go ahead.
I agree with you there.
I think also, to me, you know, when you look at the surveys that we got about priorities, it's safety and it's student well-being, social emotional health, and it's hard to pick out positions when it's lumped together in large, you know, numbers. But to me, my priority very much is to maintain those supports. You know, heard about, you know, suicide and how, I mean, the numbers are staggering how much it's increased the last few years, especially amongst marginalized populations. And so I just feel like it's really important that look at that as, you know, we talk about the school building, but, you know, it's kind of like feeding kids. If they're super hungry, they're not gonna learn, and if they're in a state, you know, socially or emotionally that isn't healthy, they're not gonna learn. So, to me, that's just a huge priority, and I don't know where they all live in all the buckets, but.
Yeah.
And that's very true. And the other concern that I have, like you brought up, in certain different social-economical areas, some kids don't do very well, and they need that additional support. So I know our title schools will be covered, but then there are those schools that are right on the edge, that, you know, in one respect, they might have been title if it not for the community that that some of their kids serve. So we need to make sure that we consider all school communities and what they need. You know, instead of saying, well, this school is not a title school, so therefore you don't need, but we know that they could need it if it were not for the larger population. I mean, I think that the cutoff is what, 39% free and reduced lunch for the district? And that school may have maybe 33% free and reduced lunch. Well, wait a minute, that's not very far. So are we being arbitrary in deciding what's the cutoff line for what they need and what they don't need?
Well, I think I think what you're illustrating there is that social emotional needs don't have an income requirement, right? Like it affects all levels.
Right.
And just because you're in a more affluent area doesn't mean you don't need those services. And, you know, I love that our district, I honestly love that our district has spent so much time and money on social emotional learning, and I think for adults that touch kids every day, touch their lives every day, it's important to be aware of that, but it's also important to know when it's kind of out of your depth and you need a professional like a social worker or psychologist to come in and do those things. I have a neighbor who was a math teacher in a neighboring district, and he left teaching because of a lot of the social emotional learning expectations. He didn't have the capacity for it. He said, I just want to teach math. I don't, you know, and I'm glad that he knew that and he pulled himself out of that. But, you know, I don't expect a teacher to be a parent and a babysitter and a counselor and all these things and so that's why funding these types of positions like social workers is so important.
Yeah, and that's what I too would really like to recognize all of the people that put input onto this. I appreciate all of the very thoughtful conversations. And I'm thinking too about the board over here that doesn't have as much FTE, but it has services and things, and there are some services we don't want cut. But I appreciate how much, and especially in this building, a hard look at budget, a hard look at annual spend. I mean, those are hard looks. And I just really appreciate the care that was taken and the thoughtfulness. And I was told too that this conversation will go back out to the principals, that, you know, if depending on what we agree on tonight, and how it'll get communicated back out to the schools. And so I do appreciate, this is really hard, but this was less hard than I imagined. Honestly, the way this was done, I think this was very thoughtful for us as having to make these tough decisions, because this is excruciating.
I agree. I think it was a very thoughtful meeting, the way that it was structured. It was really good.
I'll just also chime in. It was clear, as you were saying, that there have been a lot of discussions as to the whys on every one of these, and some are easier than others. So I do hope, and I haven't been here long enough, I hope the same discussion does happen on a regular basis with every budget, because I think there's always some cutbacks, and anytime we can cut back in one category and put it back over to these other, to the kids, is gonna be every year. But clearly a lot of work again. Well done.
And just to reiterate a thank you to all the cabinet members and staff and Dr. Saltzman for leading this and doing the hard work, because it's not, you know, you are the folks talking to the people that are going to be affected by this. We're not, we're just the board. So you guys have the hard job, and we appreciate you very much in this process.
I'd like to ditto that, Dr. Kaufman, you cabinet did an extraordinary job putting this all together, and, you know, having the ability to tell us exactly, no, that is that, you know, that person or that position, and that particular position it's been vacant. And so we can cut there, we understand that.
Thank you.
But my biggest concern are those things that directly support our students need to be preserved at all costs.
I know I have my back to cabinet and but I will compliment the cabinet for the hard work and the care work that they did. This did not happen overnight, as you know, and you might have heard a lot of things about the process, but process was led with facilitation. Process was with a lot of input, a lot of debate, a lot of discussion over 8 Mondays. That went from 9 a.m. to 12, and then a break, and then back to 2 to about 5. And we always want to put the students first. We've taken that very thoughtfully. We continue to communicate this out to everybody, so there's no surprises in the system, so that everybody understands that we're doing our best to get this done. The process that you saw tonight was deliberate, it was planned, and we appreciate the board being here tonight and giving us input. And to comment to Director Herman, we will be doing this quite often, because now our cabinet is consumers of the budget. And I really mean that, okay? We're gonna look at every item all the time. It is part of our norm. It is part of our work. Because at the end of the day, we're gonna right-size the organization, but we're gonna continue educating students every day. And you've been an amazing board to work with through this process. It has been bumpy for everybody. And as your superintendent, I can assure you that we're gonna not only right-size the organization, but we're gonna continue doing these processes so that everything always continues to have the focus of the system. So I want to thank you for that this evening.
Here's hoping we have a surgeon enrollment next year.
Yes.
There's a lot of babies out there, so it might take 3 or 4 years, but
Babies are going down. Not as many as there used to be.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments that you'd like to put forward?
he doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Yeah, they're saving money.
The
heat's turned off, they're saving money.
I guess I do have one question.
Okay.
And
I'll take the podium if that's okay.
I'm just, I guess, as we go through this process, there's a lot being given up by everyone throughout our district in terms of support services, especially the CRC and the admin team. You know, even things like giving up, you know, pay and days off and such. Has there, you know, will we be working with our groups to see if there's any concessions? Has that been a conversation amongst?
Certainly has, certainly has, Director Bates.
I know
that, you know, I mean,
this year will not be
everyone-
affected, correct? But this is the following year.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
So we have had several conversations, President's Council, some individual conversations up till now. Based on the results of this meeting, we have communications ready. If there's an approval, then we will start tomorrow communicating with all the groups, which basically is communicating the decision the board made, and then we'll be coordinating time to meet with every single group to talk through the impact on them, alternatives, other suggestions, and we'll have a timeline there leading up to when the recommendation is due to the superintendent.
And are there any contractual legal concerns that we have at this particular point, Junction?
Each of those and any considerations that might have an impact are included in the conversations. We have a timeline that has been reviewed by council, as well as we've created a document that has all of our associations' layoff and recall language side by side that we're tracking over the process.
And to be clear with the board, we have a process called the run of show, which starts this communication, and it starts tomorrow. We knew we'd have this tonight. We have it in place already to go tomorrow. We want to be in front of this, and we've done a really good job in front of this, but we're starting tomorrow. It is already in place. You won't have my back to everybody, so.
So do we have action?
Any other questions that you have?
Ms. Strauss?
Okay. Are we now moving to section 5.0, new business?
Yes.
Okay.
So, new business would be, me to ask you to approve a resolution to direct the superintendent to develop and present a reduction plan for February 28th.
Directors, at this particular time, the recommended action is that the Board of Directors approve Resolution 1290, which is preparations for reduction of the 2023-24 operating budget. And we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Director Nichols and seconded by Director Mitchell that the board approves Resolution 1290, which asks for preparation for reduction of the 2023-24 operating budget. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries. The resolution has been approved.
I do have a final question. As this moves forward, there was a February 24th date, I believe, in our timeline.
February 28th date.
No, let me
Okay.
finish. There was a February, it was the week before, and that's when the plan was to be
February
finalized.
24th is when we give our recommendations to the superintendent for him to have time to review it before he presents it to you.
And will there be an opportunity for the board to review it and
Not
comment?
probably until he reviews it, because he's
Right,
giving
that's
his.
what I'm saying, so
Yeah.
sometime between the 24th and the 28th.
Yes.
That will
Okay.
there be, okay.
Okay, we will have an
I
opportunity.
don't want to show up at the
It'll be in
28th
the-
with,
With not having seen it, no,
Without
no.
It'll be in the
background.
board docs for the meeting on the.
right, but it'd be nice to talk through it with someone if that's an opportunity.
Sure.
Well,
We'll have that opportunity to do it. We'll set it up with myself, and we'll go over it. And any other questions I have with anybody, if you need any questions besides me there, I'll have it organized. I'll work with Ms. Vonnegas to coordinate that.
Okay,
okay, gotcha.
thank you.
Great. Any other questions? So the resolution has been approved by all those. Thank you so very much.
Brian has some good questions on it.
Okay. Any other follow-up questions or concerns? Okay, we'll now move to section 6.0, which is adjourning this meeting. This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you. Okay, I do have a question, Shandy.